Okay, everyone, we are at the third workshop for the Piton Noir, and as requested, we are going to talk about the disappearance of Mumma Dell, which is a story that won. Just want to make sure I get the exact phrasing right here. It won the Commonwealth Writers Short Story Prize for the Caribbean region. So, yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to do was discuss the content of the story, how the writer approached the subject matter, and I wanted, so I sent out some questions to sort of get people thinking about what those things are and how they look in when they're put into a story. So one of the things that I wanted to start off with is just somebody like, I don't have the cultural touchstones to understand everything in the story, and that's okay, but I have questions. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and I hope that's going to start a conversation about how the culture was embedded into the story. So my first question for everyone is, who is Mumma Dell?
So
Mumma Dell is the mother.
Sorry, Sharon?
the mother-in-law.
The mother-in-law, okay.
Yes, of his
I
mother.
think it was the grandmother of Miguel,
Of
the
Miguel,
Doppy.
yes. So the mother-in-law, the mother, yeah.
I thought she was the grandmother, Miguel's grandmother.
That's what
Yes,
I thought.
yes.
She's also the Doppy, the dead lady.
Yeah, the dead lady, yeah. Now, Miguel calls his mother Mrs. Warren.
Yes.
I was confused by that.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
If I may, because I'm
Yep.
not sure how we're going to structure the discussion because we all are talking over each other. So perhaps Chrissy might just want to like pick somebody and let let everybody kind of weigh in on that.
Okay,
But,
so I'll go around the screen and I'll ask questions of everybody. And
I think so. I think, yeah, just ask your question and then just say, Nicole, what's your take on this? And then, we can ask Sharon and then we can ask Dorothy. I'm sure we all had 3 different perspectives to share.
Okay, so Nicole,
Sure.
why does Miguel call his mom Mrs. Warren?
I think that the author is trying to show that, and that's what she's known as in the village. And he's grown up hearing everybody call her this. So I think probably more than he has called her mother or mom or anything like that, but he's heard this all of his life. So I think also it's a reflection of that there's a bit of a distance in their relationship, that it's not necessarily affectionate. I mean, she obviously cares for him, but perhaps they don't have that very close relationship where he calls her mom or mama. But I think it's probably a little bit of just, this is a child's impression of how his mother is looked at in the village. Maybe, yeah. So that's kind of like my thinking on that.
Sharon, do you have anything to add?
I think because she's his stepmother.
She's
Could be
not.
because-
I didn't get that impression.
Sorry,
No.
she's not his stepmother, no.
So, because like, why would you call your mother Mistress Warren? With your biological mother in the Caribbean, we say mommy.
Yeah.
No. Sorry.
No?
Dorothy, sorry, we couldn't hear you. Could you say that again?
Okay, sorry, you're talking to me. Okay. Well, no, I know of a lady who taught with us at the convent, and she called her mother by her Miss and the person's name. I don't want to say it in this. She called the person Miss and the name simply because in the household, I think she heard a helper calling the mother that way, and it was not a relationship with, let's say, a 2-family household. There were other people living in the house, and she just called her mother Miss and the given name. So you do have it. So it's not unusual. It just shows really that she had a more powerful life outside of being his mother, outside the home, than it was in the home. And therefore she was Mrs. Warren to him.
So that, I think you're making allusion to her role as the village spiritual leader.
Yes, yeah, yeah, that was more powerful or more important to her than being the mother. So he saw her as this big figure, yeah. Mhm.
I think you make a good point. One of the things that I noticed that especially touched me was the way she reacted when he would do things that she didn't like, and when he would say things that would cross her authority as the religious leader. She warns him to stay away from the tree, and she knows he won't, and she just gives him dirty looks, and it was like a person protecting her position rather than a mother trying to guide her child.
It may be to like it's to show his respect, to show respect.
Mhm.
I know in some Caribbean households, I don't necessarily think of children calling their parents by the honorifics, but we all call our neighbors as children. We all called our neighbors Mr. So and so, Mrs. So and so. Children don't call adults by their first names. So, I mean, maybe there's that element of respect in there as well. But I think, as Dorothy pointed out, it may just be that he sees her role as spiritual leader as more significant than as mother.
Mhm.
So, just to kind of add to that.
Okay, and when I was in university, I read The Stranger by Albert Camus, and I read it in English and I read it in French. And the first line of the story is "Mother died," but in French it says "Maman," which is a more intimate word than in the English. So when we talked about Mumma Dell versus Mrs. Warren, there was an intimacy with Mumma Dell immediately, even though she's not necessarily present in the story, her presence is felt throughout the story. So Sharon, I wanted to know if you had any sort of impressions or similar reactions to that contradiction.
To me, as I said, I didn't see Mama Dell as his mom. Miss Moran, I think it's his stepmother, and Mama Dell is his grandmother. That's the way I see it. That's the way I interpret the work. But I don't see her as a like Mrs. Warren also. It could be that because she were Mrs. Warren, it could be that she's carrying the name of that last man. As you say, he dropped seed like bird. So Mistress Warren, they would say like a gonga day, like a mockery. They say, oh, she belongs to so and so. So Mistress Warren or Mistress Dorrible belonging to that set man. That's the way I understand it.
Interesting. Interesting.
I am not sure, sorry, what, but so Sharon, you're still confused thinking that she was not his mother, not his biological mother? Because
Yes.
remember later, sorry, and Chris, remember later in the story when he met up with the guy under the pear tree, and he said, I have to run an errand for my mother, she's waiting. And remember what he said? Miguel, your mother has been waiting for years. Well, I mean, that's a technique to give us an insight into more information in the story. Your mother has been waiting for your father since he left her for years. So, I mean, she is his biological mother. His father has left. And later on, maybe I'm jumping, but later on in the story, we see the reason why the father left her after the burial, because there was a little difference of opinion. And it was Mumma Dell was the father's mother, and
Right.
the mother, Miguel's mother, I think had a different plan for the burial than what the father had in terms of the hearse or the carriage coming for them or whatever. And when the thing took off and the coffin flew off and they couldn't find it, remember the man left. He said, Miguel, his wife, I assume it was his wife, he married her. His wife, who was Miguel's mother, disrespected his mother. So that's why, that was the reason given, and he left her. he said she disrespected his mother. You didn't get that part?
Yes, I got that part.
Yes, yes. So therefore, yeah, but she was Miguel's biological mother. There's no doubt about that.
So which I think ties back into why Chris was saying it is so odd that he would call his biological mother Mrs. Warren. So this is kind of the conundrum that we're dealing with here.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, as I said, it shows how powerful she was outside of it, and that's how everybody related to her as that. She was such a powerful village lady.
I think the to tie into that, the relationship when Miguel goes into town and he sees brother Anthony drinking, and that becomes a moment of power for the little boy, right? He all of a sudden has a picture of this and he can manipulate this older man to do what he wants because Mrs. Warren wouldn't approve. I found that a little bit of comedy very interesting. And then the fact that the rest of the villagers just what did they disappeared or they melted like
the dew, like the morning dew.
Yeah.
Once you mentioned Mama Dell.
And I thought that made Miguel a very lonely boy. You know?
Yeah, you don't get the impression that he has friends or other people that he's close to in the village.
No. And the only way he's learned to interact with people is through manipulation, just like his mother and their religious cult, for lack of a better sect, for lack of a better word. So I think that that was interesting. But I did want to get into the style of the story. So Nicole, how would you describe how the story is written?
So I'm not sure in terms of the genre, but obviously it's written in first person for a start. I would probably describe it as a bit of a bildungsroman. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, but it's a coming of age story. As you said, you know, Miguel figures out his position in the world and his mother's position in the world and the power that she has over the community. And he kind of taps into that a little bit by using the threat of her as a way to manipulate people. So, yeah, again, the genre, I would have a hard time kind of pinning it down. So, but I do see it as a coming of age story.
Okay. And Sharon?
I just thought it was a teen fiction.
Interesting.
Teen fiction, that's what I did. I like how they introduce, the writer introduced history and traditional folklore in there. Like at the end, I was surprised the way they tie in all the Indian natives and the bones and stuff like that. That was really smart. That's really wise to do it like that. But I kind of see now what Nicole is saying about coming of age, because that's really like a different way of writing for us. And as the writer encourages us to go out forward with social media, to share the story, to share our folklore, to connect with other writers. I think that's what we ought to do. Other than that, I think it's pretty deep where they're taking us, where they're trying to take us in this story.
And Dorothy, what was your impression of how the story was written?
Well, first of all, I found this style, the tone from the very beginning, very engaging. The way it got the reader into it, almost like Mark Twain in one of his.
I'm so sorry, but I can't hear her.
Okay, I said I like the way that. Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's a little clearer.
Okay, the way he engaged the reader from the start, almost like a sort of Mark Twain, like Huck Finn or Tom Sawyer story, just to tell, and the kind of conversational tone, very chatty. So I like that. And then the images are very concrete. That's something else that you could relate to. Even the similes when he spoke of like something being like salt from the sky, but you get even the description, something that you could Church of the Living Sun or the Postal Agency, you know. So the as I said, the images are very, very concrete in the way they're told, and the story is told. You get information through different techniques. So it's not a straight, let's say, narrative where you can get bored. You learn from, as I said, this man who was speaking the peers, you get information from Miguel, you get a lot of information, even the technique of the mother speaking to Miguel while she thought he was asleep. I mean, that I found very clever when he learned the whole story from his mother who thought she was asleep. And the reason is very humorous because she thought you could get a boy's spirit is more awake when he's asleep than when he's sleeping. So I like the humor, the lots of biblical allusions to support the point, you know. So
Mm.
I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed it.
Yeah,
And
when I was reading this story, it really felt like a written version of an oral history, and I almost like a ghost story. In that I could see somebody sitting around a kitchen table or a campfire telling the story, and I think the writer encourages that because he uses dialect throughout the entire story, and the narrating and the dialogue are written in the exact same language, and I think that helps you create a picture of the place in your head. It's not just some weird accent that the character is putting on, but rather it's part of the place. And even though didn't know what a jack crow was, it didn't matter. I knew that there were these scary birds in the
John
the
Crow.
forest, right? Like, or John Crow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think they're vultures, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to Google it, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But yeah, it's very much I saw it as a horror or as a mystery almost, because there is a mystery
A
that needs to
thriller.
be solved,
Yeah.
a thriller. And I again really liked the way the language was integrated into the story, and I think that might have been why it won the award, is because that's so seamless. Now,
I, well, okay, certain things really appeal to me that every now and again you have like a sort of adult reflection on it. I think there's a certain point where he gets indigestion from the pears he supposedly ate in his dream. I mean, there's humor, and at the same time, there is this kind of reflection on like, and I think he says, little boys don't listen, and he got indigestion from eating too much or something. And there's another point too where I think somebody who is it who would prophesy, and he made the comment after she had eaten a plate full of something. I can't remember what, but obviously the plate caused the indigestion, the full plate, but she's tying her religious things into it. So basically, underneath, I believe there's a serious tone of almost a sort of, I don't know if the criticism is too harsh, of religion, which is almost a superstition in the way it is lived in that village.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I think superstition is a very it's an overriding theme of the story, and how these people's lives are bound up in superstition. I mean, they don't eat or they don't act without that fear over their lives, that whatever they're doing is going to invoke the wrath of the spirits and all of this sort of stuff. So I think superstition is a major theme of the story.
Sharon?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it was interesting to me that I think that theme of superstition was definitely very strong, and it was almost a criticism. Again, I think, Dorothy, the word may be too harsh, but I think, is it this? Oh, what's his name? The struggler. He takes these avocado and he sells them to the townsfolk, and they eat them all.
Yes.
And it's almost a hypocritical, yet unconscious hypocritical actions on their part.
But they don't know the truth. Remember, they don't know because he is featuring and they think they're buying pears from a different town. So it just shows how vulnerable, in a sense, they become when they base so much of their actions on superstition.
Yeah.
So this man is benefiting from it.
We're told that they don't know, but I don't necessarily agree with that. Because one, everybody's going to be walking by this tree. It's a very small community. You're going to know which avocados, are there enough avocados on the ground or not, like from what's falling and what's being produced. And this guy's selling them on the edge of town and nobody knows. People think he's getting them from, I think it was St. Anne or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But I think that in that kind of a community, people are going to suspect but not ask.
But what you say about in the Caribbean is what you don't know won't hurt you.
Well, especially if everybody's scared of Mrs. Warren and she hates that avocado tree. So no one's eating the avocados because of that thing. But there's a really good source of them over there. Now, I don't know. I just thought it was, having grown up in small communities, I think it would have been an open secret.
Okay.
My other question for you, let me just double check where I was here. Okay. Oh, right. I think there's a very important element to the story we haven't discussed yet, and that is the influence of the outside world and the corporations that come to mind, the bauxite and the railway tracks and the Europeans and the Canadian Reporter. And I just wanted to, maybe we'll start with Nicole. Can you sort of give me how you saw those pieces fitting together in this story?
Well, I think the author is taking a little poke at colonialism and the impact that colonialism continues to have on Caribbean islands. So we all know the stories of the European colonists in the Caribbean. We know the history, and it continues that sort of idea of the resources of the Caribbean being ravaged and being pillaged by European companies as a result of, you know, the whole colonial setup from before, and how, you know, the impact continues, the influence continues. And I think, so the author, I think, was sort of taking a moment to have a bit of a maybe even a socio-economic take on what was happening in the town by showing how here the villagers have this resource that is so desired by foreign companies. They themselves don't seem to have the resources to be able to mine the bauxite and to use it for their own benefit. But now they're about to be, you know, invaded, if you like, again, by this company that's going to come in and take the resources out, and the community is still going to remain impoverished. All of the wealth that exists will be utilized by these companies and taken away by these companies. And, you know, their world is going to shrink that much more because of it. They're going to be inconvenienced and probably, you know, ironically, economically disadvantaged because of it. So I think that was sort of the author's little pause in the story to show that, yes, you know, the influence and the long-term impacts of colonialism still exist. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, that's great. Sharon, do you have a reaction?
I think Nick covered it all.
Okay, Dorothy?
Okay, well, yes, he does bring up the environment to a great extent, and he shows the different sites that have come up, the different signs, the bauxite train and digging of it. And I don't know if it is intentional that at the end, how the story is resolved, that what, remember the sign had said something about mining for mineral. I can't remember the words, but it came down and instead it was replaced by heritage sites when the bones were found. So in a sense, did that, you know, show that some good came of it? That, well, first of all, they wouldn't be digging for minerals there any longer since it now became a heritage site. But prior to that, we see the different works that had been undertaken by the digging up and the looting. And I wonder if the landslide that occurred at the end with Trimmer, if it wasn't triggered by all that digging for the minerals. And ironically, that is what turned the story around so that Mumma Dell was found, because of the digging up for minerals, digging the earth.
Yeah, I think that that's interesting. One of my reactions to the whole story was, okay, they kept I think Mumma Dell died waiting for the European company to come through with their promises, and it never happened. I mean, that's colonialism in a nutshell. And I think in the end, they discovered that they had a richness and a depth that was there the whole time that they hadn't explored because they kept waiting for the Europeans to come and save them.
Yeah,
Yes.
and sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm just saying that it still goes back to the idea that they have no control over their destiny because they are still dependent on the Europeans now to save them by declaring them a heritage site, right? So if that had not happened, all of the negative things that were going to happen to them because of the mining, all of that was going to be inevitable. So in a way, they still have no control over their future and over their I've lost my words here, but they have no control over how their lives are run, over their lands, over their resources, because now it is going to be designated as a site. So sort of that whole, pardon me, white savior mentality, right? That, now they've had to be saved from the Europeans by the Europeans, so there's still no control or autonomy. That's the word I'm looking for. There's still no autonomy for the natives of the island. That's my point.
That's an excellent point. Yeah. I think that's a very valuable perspective.
Thank you.
I like how he draws us though to open our eyes to the exploitations of the government and all these people too. But like we listen, we as storytellers listen, like to get all this and what is happening out to social media, and like what about the locals? Like are they going to be like are they going to have enough resources to fight back eventually? Like let's say that don't come through, we see the false promises, right? Like when are they going to learn to fight? Like yes, we can talk through writing, but what if there's not enough storytellers to go wrong? What if there's not, like we said, oral enough of this and not recorded? That writer was lucky he was able to write a story and get it out, but what about the many that were just shut down?
You're talking about the, I guess everybody else who didn't make it into the competition.
Yeah, not the competition, like in life, in the whole community. What about the other people's stories who were shut down? At least he was able to make it out and to get it known for us to open our eyes, and we know about the World Heritage Site. But the other people now, the other storytellers, the oral storytellers, the lost art of the storytelling is how are we going to get this out? As he's saying, that's way I see it. He tells us to come out as storytellers to connect with each other, right? To get these stories out. That's the way I see it. Like when he's talking about the Taino and all that stuff. So how those who don't have this resource, who don't have the opportunity, how will their story be heard?
I think one of the way that the story gets out is through social media, and social media is one to many. So one person can very easily, quickly send a video, a text, a message, and communicate with tons of people. And there's no organization that's an intermediary. So instead of, sorry, I'm working this through as I'm speaking, but instead of waiting for the Europeans to come and save them, he was proactive and he put his story out, and that had a positive effect in his community. It took time because there was a jump of a couple of months, and so it took time for that to happen, but eventually it did. So it could almost be like him taking control of his own story resulted in something positive. And I think that maybe blends what Nicole and Sharon were saying.
Yes, I think so.
I think too that we have to start like writers, and I'm speaking in the context of Caribbean communities. We have to appreciate the value of our own stories first,
Yes.
right? I think that's where it begins with us realizing that there is value in our oral tradition, there's value in our stories, and that we should be actively looking for ways to preserve it. The technologies exist now, right?
Mhm.
So we should be coming together in groups as we're doing here with Piton Noir, creating new stories, preserving the old stories, and then finding ways to disseminate them so that other people will see the value in them. But it has to start with us first taking ourselves seriously and not
Mhm.
waiting for somebody else from another country to come and say, oh, these are so, these are great. These are important stories. This is your history and it should be preserved for generations. We need to be proactive about it ourselves.
Remember, Miguel said social media is more powerful than Obia, and therefore he took the picture he had then of what's his name again, struck the same man who was
Struggling.
stealing pills. Remember that was what he posted to avenge his mother. Remember, he said his mother deserved better than that. So
Mhm.
he posted the picture of the man stealing the pears, and he posted it so that everyone could know the truth. So that was his way of trying to educate his people so they could see the truth then and not be bogged down by superstition or obia about
Mhm.
simple detail of not eating the pears, but it could be taken in a larger context. So
I question how effective that was, though, Mrs. Levy, because the first thing these people did was to try and make amends for having eaten these pears instead of, I guess using some, but I guess it's easy for me to say common sense and saying,
mhm,
okay, well, I've been eating these pears for years and nothing bad has ever happened to me as a
mhm.
result of it. The first thing they did was to jump back into that position of
To put more
superstition and
money,
try to
put more
make
money.
offerings. And
Uh,
you were saying?
no, I said one of the ways I think they put more money in the collection bin to make amends to atone for their transgression.
Exactly.
Yeah, but,
So as far as I can tell, they learned absolutely nothing.
nothing, exactly.
Because they're still looking for a savior, right? When they do that, they're still looking for savior.
I think that's an
Mhm.
interesting point, Sharon, because it's almost the role that Mrs. Warren plays in the community is that of religious, superstitious leader, savior,
Yeah.
and she gets embroiled in all of it, and it doesn't really do the community any good that I can see.
Mhm. Yeah.
It doesn't do her any good.
No, no, it actually hurts her in many ways. Yeah.
And I think one of the ways points back to what you referred to at the beginning is the fact that she has this very odd relationship with her son, her biological son, who sees her more as a figurehead
Mhm.
and as an icon than he does as a parental figure, as a mother. You don't get that affection. You don't feel any intimacy in the relationship. I mean, it's obvious she cares about him, but it's in that sort of
It's
rough
rigid,
bringing you up by
rigid,
jerks.
yes,
You
it's
know that
rigid.
I think it was Great Expectations. Pip complains that his sister is, she's bringing him up, but she's bringing him
It
up
was
by jerks.
dragged up rather than brought up properly.
Exactly.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Mhm.
yeah.
Even when she she set up the deliverance table and she's eyeing him and she's like, oh no, he's like, this is about me. And she's praying down and squirting. It's like, oh. He didn't even know that was for him, that deliverance day.
Yeah, it's a passive aggressive kind of approach, I guess.
Oh,
Well,
that was so toxic. I felt that was a very toxic moment in their relationship. To be publicly called out like that. I mean, I imagined a very small space, an intimate space in that when they were doing that, and
Mhm.
everybody would know she was looking at him and making eyes at him. It's not subtle in any way. He's being publicly called out, and probably everybody knows it. I mean, it was a horrible moment of shame for him as I saw it.
or maybe he was so accustomed. It's a very rigid kind of upbringing, almost like inflexible,
Mhm.
and she will not go against her so-called standards or religious principles for her son. So, in other words, she wants him to know, listen, you're second place. My religion, my place with God comes first, and you're just second. So don't try to bend me in any way.
Mhm.
And he will not budge, where he's concerned.
I think we have to be, I think we have to be understanding of her position too. She's very entrenched in these beliefs. And I think she obviously cares about her son. She cares about his life. She cares, that he's invoking the wrath of his grandmother's spirit, who's obviously somebody that she feared and who has caused the end of her marriage. So I think that she lives her life in a lot of fear and has lived her life in a lot of fear. So as much as she has this position of power in the community, you get the sense that even she doesn't feel in control of the things that happen. And this is why she is so obsessed with getting him to avoid going to this tree, because she does not feel she can protect him, if he doesn't listen to her. So she goes through all of this sort of, pantomime and all of this kind of thing. And in the end of it, I think, and speaks to him while she thinks he's sleeping, because she's trying to get through to his subconscious with her warnings, because she cares. She obviously cares about him, but I think the fear supersedes that in the way that she interacts with him.
It could be that a little bit of revenge, because if, as you guys explained to me now, Mama Dell broke up her marriage. It could be, some parents are like that because they break up with their husband. They take it up on the kids and they try to protect the kids. Oh, you cannot see the grandmother. You don't want to learn the history of that grandmother because it was broken, because something was taken away from them. I see a lot of Caribbean parents do that. And it's like, okay, I'm mother, I'm the stout mother, like that kind of a impression. And then I'm going to raise you, but you're not going to learn that about that other family.
But
And
sorry,
I see that
there's
too.
a heavy shower in the background. But Miguel didn't know Mumma Dell. Remember that? Miguel didn't know her. The impression I get, because remember the whole story, he wanted to find out who is Mumma Dell. So he didn't know her. He didn't know Mumma Dell.
That's what I'm saying. His mother, Shepherd mother, kept that information away from him. Maybe because of that, she was revengeful because of their marriage was broken, right? And she probably, I don't know how to say it.
I know what you're saying. That that it's kind of a situation where she's angry. She's still angry at what happened, and in some ways, keeping that information from him is a way of getting back at the mother-in-law.
Yes.
I think you're stretching a point. I think you're really stretching it to go there, but I see what you're saying. And yeah, I mean, unfortunately, people do behave that way when relationships end.
Because if she wanted him to know, she could have taught him that from small, tell him about Mama Dell. He shouldn't have to go out to the community to ask him, who is Mama Dell, and like to see how he was outcast. Because of Mama Dell, which is his grandmother, he should have known that this lady was his grandmother, was Mama Dell, and why that tree is significant in his life, and why she does, she shouldn't be scared of that.
Maybe it's not fair.
There was such fear over the whole incident that nobody wanted to talk about that. A coffin is missing, a corpse is missing, nobody knows where that person is, yet because they're so superstitious in their minds, that person maybe haunts the village. So nobody wants to even mention her name. Because remember when Miguel asked the question that the people disappeared, they didn't want to talk about it. And it's because he almost had to blackmail the fellow that that he asked, who it was, and so.
Yeah, I think that touches on my next question was, how did she expect to keep that secret from him? I mean, the entire community is built around avoiding that tree, and I mean, it's his grandmother, so eventually this story has to come out. So why would she avoid it so hard and make him learn it on his own. I don't see the purpose in that.
Maybe she was hoping when he got a little older that he would hear the story or it would come up in a discussion. But maybe while he was still young, she wanted to protect him. Maybe she saw that as a way of protecting him. Or maybe even fear of mentioning the name. You know, maybe there was such deep fear of that whole situation that even to mention the name would stir up some kind of reaction.
It's almost like the talk that parents have with their children about sex. You know, you don't want to talk to them too early because you don't want them getting any ideas, but you try to protect them from everything, but eventually they're going to learn about it anyway. So
Because even when he come out to and ask her, she could have been honest with him, but she avoided his question. Instead going and doing that whole delivery thing, you know, and then even when she was passed out, he heard her mention Mama Dell, and that spiked interest in his mind. You know, that means she knows something and she's not telling him. So now more strain on their relationship because, hey, you're not honest with me, you're not open with me.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's because that's where I think I thought it had an element of mystery, because there were these little nuggets of information that were doled out throughout the story that kept you interested. It's like, I actually made a chart. I'll show you briefly the chart that I made, so that you can, because I wanted to talk about how the structure of the story was. So I broke the story into different sections, and my chart's at the bottom. We're getting there. And so I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So we have the introduction and the background after. So we have the initial story, part of the story where we get introduced to Miguel. And then we have some building tension, a little bit more background, the main action. And then this is when she tells Miguel when he's asleep what's going on, and then the end of the story. So this is just what percentage of the story is dedicated to each of these sections that I identified. And the numbers don't really matter, but I think it shows, remember we were talking earlier about that rising tension structure, and it shows he dedicated more space to the building the tension, but there were all these elements of background where you're dropping hints throughout the story so that the reader will be interested and keep Miguel on the warpath, trying to figure out what's going on. So that was just sort of a graphic that I wanted to share with everyone.
Yeah, please make sure you send that to me so I can share with the rest of the group as well.
Sure.
Please.
Yeah. So it's just a way to, you can recreate the structure of a story by looking at it through these points of tension. And every time Miguel learns something new, that causes him to act, right? So he learns the name Mumma Dell. Well, once he learns the name Mumma Dell, that sets him on a path, and he's going to follow that path to the logical conclusion. And then he, I think the next moment that I identified was learning that about the funeral. No, that wasn't it. It was about, oh, my brain isn't working. I think it was after Brother Anthony left and he met the struggler. That was another, the struggler gave him little bits of information. It was very explicit in the story that, you know, I promised to give you more information. I promised to give you more information. Oh, and $500 too. Like that was very explicitly stringing us, not stringing it, but stringing us along in the story so that we would continue reading. Yeah.
I think he built suspense really well. Yeah, and like you said, you know, it's like he dropped these little nuggets that kept us moving along the story, because, you know, everything we learned was just another tantalizing detail that helped to build our expectations, you know, of this grand reveal. And I think also that we weren't disappointed by the reveal. You know, there was it was such a huge secret, you know, that not only is Mumma Dell, well, maybe I shouldn't give away the end in case there's anybody who hasn't had a chance to read it yet. But let's just say the reveal was worth sticking with the story and remaining committed to the storyline.
He also did a good job at incorporating different cultures.
How do you mean?
Like the different people, like we see the scammer, we see government in there, we see the religious people, we see the drunkard, like how they bring it together, syncing really nicely to create that mystery, historical fiction that is present in that he won.
Okay, so we are getting near the end of the allotted time, so I wanted to give everyone one more chance to make a comment or an observation about the story. So Sharon, why don't we start with you?
One more thing is how he incorporates his whole Jamaican dialect. He did not shame of it. Like he used the patois, Dopi, he used Dronko, he used like stuff that will teach us more about his own country. And I think we should incorporate that more into our own writing about our country, where we are from. It leads to more learning and more education, you know.
Yeah. Dorothy, do you have a final comment?
Well, I really loved the story from the time I read it, and I really like the different techniques, as I said, he used to get the information across. It never does it ever become boring, and the different people all contribute to the unfolding of the story. So we get bits and pieces of information from them. I like the style, the language. In addition to the religious, the biblical allusions, you can see it is somebody who is really in the church, so he has to use that kind of language. We also get the colloquial part of it. And as I said, the images are so concrete. I think, does he compare the sky to like the roof of the houses, and that anyway, I found the descriptions, the similes, so very relevant, so very powerful. I can't think offhand, but I remember reading this story that is what struck me when he spoke of, like, what was it? The roof of a church when the sunshine fell on it. I can't remember. You know what? The sun climbed high and the church into a zinc. I can't remember the rest. I don't want to take up time. But anyway, as I said, I just love the way he blends the similes into the story when he's giving the description. They're all very relevant to the subject matter, to the whole theme of his subject.
Okay, thank you. And Nicole?
I think that what I appreciated about the story is throughout, there's a undertone of humor to it, and he is sort of gently poking fun at his people. This has been part of his own growing up experience, and he knows these people very well. You can almost see him remembering neighbors and members of his community, and he's written them into the story. And there is a sort of a gentle mockery. I think mockery is probably too strong a word, but he is poking a bit of fun at them, for their simple-mindedness, for their superstitious beliefs. But there's also a lot of affection, I think, that he writes with for his characters there. He makes them personable. He makes them relatable. So I think I appreciated that aspect of his writing.
Yeah, I used to live in a small resource town in northern Manitoba, and I was able to relate to the story through that experience as well. The imagery was very visual in the story, and I was able to picture myself there, even though I've never been to Jamaica. But my own experiences, I was able to bring them to the story and have it be relevant. And I found that was a great trick, a great technique on his part, is to be able to call onto those universal elements of parochialism that are in all small towns, And that's a universality that I found was particularly well done. So, well, with that, I think we are at the end of our time. So I would like to thank you for participating so actively. That made everything go much more smoothly. And Nicole, did you have any final words?
Well, I just want to say thank you for all of the thought and the hard work and the diagrams and the notes that you've made. And we look forward to reading them more in depth once we've got this up on YouTube. And I will share it in the notes so that everybody can kind of follow along with the discussion. And yeah, I would advise everybody to get a hold of Mumma Dell. I'm not sure where they can access it. I'm guessing it's probably off the Commonwealth short story contest website.
I got it online at granta.com.
Granta.com. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, so thank you everybody, and we look forward to the next one.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. We are having a heavy shower right now. Heavy rain shower.
Well, keep dry.
Right. Have a good sleep then, Miss Levy.